What if everything you learned about the moon in school was only half the story? Not wrong exactly, just incomplete. Because the half we've been studying for the last 50 years, the half you can see on a clear night from your driveway, turns out to be the calm half, the predictable half, the half that doesn't raise uncomfortable questions. On April 6th, 2026, 4 astronauts swung around to the other side, the side that permanently faces away from Earth, the side no human had ever observed up close with their own eyes. And what they described back to Mission Control has scientists quietly revisiting assumptions they've held for decades. If you've ever looked up at the moon and wondered whether we really know as much as we think we do, you were asking the right question. Stay with us, because what these astronauts saw is about to make that question a whole lot more interesting. Here's some quick background, so this all makes sense. Artemis II mission launched April 1st, 2026 from Kennedy Space Center in Florida. 4 crew members aboard the Orion spacecraft: Commander Reed Wiseman, pilot Victor Glover, mission specialists Christina Koch and Jeremy Hansen. Their job wasn't to land. This was a crude flyby, get humans out to the moon, loop around it, come home. A shakedown run before future missions actually put boots on the surface. The rocket they rode, the Space Launch System, stands 322 feet tall and produces nearly 9 million pounds of thrust at liftoff. It pushed them out of Earth orbit in a single engine burn that lasted less than 5 minutes. After that burn, there was no option to just turn around. Their flight path was what engineers call a free return trajectory, meaning if every single engine on that spacecraft failed completely after that burn, the moon's gravity would still arc them around and send them falling back toward Earth on its own. That's the safest route available. The safest route still assumes total engine failure is a real possibility. Worth keeping in mind as we get into what they actually found out there. If you're new here, subscribe to Space Aquarius and stay with us. On April 6th, the Orion spacecraft passed behind the moon. For 40 minutes, the moon's own mass blocked every radio signal between the crew and Earth. Mission Control in Houston heard nothing, sent nothing, could do nothing. 4 people, a capsule roughly the size of a large van, 250,000 miles from the nearest help. When the signal came back, the crew started describing what they'd seen. And that's when things got interesting. During the flyby, the sun passed behind the moon from the crew's perspective a total solar eclipse, lasting nearly 54 minutes. Far longer than anything you'd ever see from your backyard here on Earth. In that darkness, with the lunar surface lit only by the faint glow of sunlight bending around the moon's edges, the crew spotted something. Flashes. Brief. Sudden. Unmistakable. At least 6 of them, confirmed by multiple crew members with their own eyes. Victor Glover, Navy captain, test pilot, a man who has logged 168 days aboard the International Space Station, confirmed it. Commander Wiseman confirmed it. Back in Houston, the scientists monitoring the mission had what one report described as, and this is a direct quote, audible screams of delight. Now, what exactly were those flashes? The short answer is small rocks hitting the moon at extremely high speed. The moon has no atmosphere, nothing to slow anything down. No air resistance, no friction, no protective bubble, like the one that burns up most of the space debris headed toward Earth every single day. When a micrometeorite, even something the size of a pebble, hits the lunar surface at tens of thousands of miles per hour, it releases energy almost instantly. That energy becomes light, a flash, gone in a fraction of a second. Scientists have theorized about this for decades. Ground-based telescopes have caught hints of it, but nobody had ever watched it happen in real time with human eyes from that close. That's what made the Houston room erupt. To understand why the rest of what the crew reported matters, you need a quick picture of what the far side of the moon actually looks like, because most people have never thought much about it. The side of the moon you can see from your front porch on a clear night is relatively smooth. Ancient lava flows filled in the big craters billions of years ago and cooled into flat plains. About a third of that near side is covered in this dark volcanic rock. The far side is a completely different world. Less than 1% volcanic coverage. Instead, it's craters on top of craters on top of older craters. The crust on the far side is roughly 30 miles thicker than the near side. Scientists don't have a fully agreed upon explanation for why that asymmetry exists. The leading theory involves a massive impact near the moon's south pole early in its history. So violent that it sent a wave of heat through the entire interior and pushed material toward the near side. That impact left behind the South Pole Aitken Basin. At roughly 2,500 miles wide and up to 8 miles deep, it's the largest preserved impact crater in the entire solar system. To put that in terms that land a little closer to home, if you dropped that crater on the continental United States, it would swallow everything from Texas to Virginia. And in 2019, researchers using gravity data from Grail mission found something sitting at least 186 miles beneath the floor of that basin. A mass anomaly. A blob of dense material so heavy it actually warps the local gravity field and pulls the basin floor downward by more than half a mile. The most likely explanation is that it's the metallic core of the asteroid that created the basin in the first place. Still buried there after 4 billion years, like a bullet that never got removed. The Artemis II crew became the first humans to see the eastern edge of this basin with their own eyes. Not satellite imagery, not processed data, their own eyes through the windows of the Orion spacecraft. The Apollo crews never had that view. Their trajectories didn't take them over the right parts of the far side. So what did they actually see when they looked? The crew had a list of 30 specific science targets for the flyby. Craters, basins, geological formations that researchers had flagged as priorities. And as they worked through that list, they kept reporting something that the satellite images hadn't prepared anyone for. Color, browns, subtle blues in certain regions, and near a feature called Aristarchus on the near side boundary, mission specialist Jeremy Hansen described greenish hues he said were unlike anything else he saw during the entire flyby. Now, color on the moon might sound like a minor detail, but it isn't. Color variations in lunar rock reveal mineral composition. They tell geologists what the surface is made of, how it formed, and roughly how old it is. The human eye particularly, one attached to a brain that has spent months training on lunar geology, picks up subtle gradations that camera sensors tend to compress into flat gray. Lunar science lead Dr. Kelsey Young explained it before the mission using a simple analogy. Imagine a sandbox at the beach. Shine a flashlight straight down on it, and you see color and texture. Move that flashlight to the side, and you lose the color but gain shadow detail that shows you the shape of every grain. The astronauts were essentially doing both at once, from an angle no camera had ever occupied. Those greenish hues near Aristarchus? Scientists believe they may be tied to the volcanic history of that region and could help refine the timeline of when volcanic activity on the moon actually stopped. But here's where it gets genuinely unsettling. In 2023, a separate research team detected a thermal anomaly buried beneath the far side surface. A region about 30 miles wide that reads roughly 10 degrees Celsius, warmer than everything around it. The likely source is a buried mass of granite. Granite is everywhere on Earth. On the moon, it's almost unheard of because granite requires water and plate tectonics to form. The moon isn't supposed to have either. Researchers believe it may be the remnant of an ancient volcano that went quiet 3.5 billion years ago, still slowly bleeding heat from deep underground. The lead scientist on that study said the finding looks far more like something you'd expect to find on Earth than anything they anticipated finding on the moon. Which raises a question that nobody had penciled in for 2026. What else down there is still warm? At 1:57 p.m. on April 7th, the Artemis II crew passed a milestone that hadn't been touched since 1970. They surpassed the distance record set by Apollo 13, 248,655 miles from Earth, and kept going. Their maximum distance reached 252,756 miles, the farthest any human being has ever traveled from this planet. Mission specialist Jeremy Hansen marked the moment on the radio. He said the crew chose that moment to challenge this generation and the next to make sure that record doesn't stand for long. Meanwhile, back in the spacecraft, the crew was still working through their observation list. Pilot Victor Glover became fixated on the terminator, the line dividing the sunlit and shadowed halves of the moon. Along that boundary, craters transform. Sunlight hits their rims at extreme angles, casting shadows so deep they look like holes punched straight through to the moon's core. Glover radioed down that the Terminator was full of what he called magic, that the islands of light surrounded by valleys of black looked like something you could fall straight through. Christina Koch described the smaller, more recent impact craters as shockingly bright against the ancient surface around them, like tiny pinprick holes in a lampshade with light shining through. These aren't just poetic descriptions, they're scientific observations. The brightness of a crater relative to its surroundings tells researchers how recently it formed. Fresh impacts are bright. Age darkens the surface through a process called space weathering constant bombardment by solar wind that slowly changes the chemistry of the top layer of rock. The crew was essentially doing real-time geological dating with their eyes. When the Orion spacecraft cleared the far side and Earth reappeared in the windows, the crew watched something that no human had seen from this distance before. The Earth, a pale blue crescent slowly dropping below the lunar horizon, disappearing behind gray, cratered rock. Christina Koch described it simply. She said that having that perspective and then comparing it to home makes you understand how much we all have in common, that everything we need, Earth provides, and that you can't fully grasp that until you've seen it from the other side. The crew named 2 craters before heading home. One they called Integrity, their nickname for the Orion spacecraft. The other they named Carol, after Commander Wiseman's late wife, Carol Taylor Wiseman, who passed away in 2020. It sits on the boundary between the near and far sides, a bright spot you can find if you know exactly where to look. Here's the honest truth about what we know and don't know about the moon. We landed on it 6 times, brought back rocks from a handful of sites, all on the near side. And from that, we built a model of the entire moon. That's roughly like landing in the Arizona desert and writing a textbook about the whole planet. The far side holds a record of impacts the near side erased under lava billions of years ago. It has a buried mass that warps gravity. It has heat sources that shouldn't exist. It has lava tubes large enough to shelter entire buildings, sealed and unexplored. It has a crust so different from the near side that the basic models of how moons form and cool don't fully account for it. And now, for the first time in over 50 years, human beings have looked at it directly. Not a robot, not a satellite, people. Victor Glover said it plainly after Orion cleared the far side. The moon is not just a poster in the sky. It's a real place. He's right. And the more we learn about it, the more questions stack up faster than the answers. The Artemis II crew splashed down off San Diego. Thousands of photographs are still being downlinked. The full scientific analysis hasn't even started yet. Whatever they found out there, we are only just beginning to find out what it means. If this video made you think twice about something you thought you already knew, that's exactly why this channel exists. Subscribe to Space Aquarius, drop a comment below telling us what you think is buried under the far side of the moon, and if you know someone who geeks out over space, share this with them. See you in the next one.